and welcome to uPhilosopher. This is our New Year's or New Year's Eve special, and I'll try and keep it brief for you because I know you have some parties to get to. That being said, our topic for today is death. As we enter into the new year, we are also losing the old year. And the reason why it's such an appropriate topic is, of course, the fact that this year seems to really have been categorized by really tragic and traumatic celebrity deaths. Most recently, we lost both Carrie Fischer and her mother, Debbie Reynolds. And this was really tremendous in terms of its terribleness, given the fact that not only was Miss Fisher, of course, especially important and remains especially important to Star Wars, but the fact that her mother died like the next day. So her mother lives long enough to see her daughter's death and then dies. But also the fact that Miss Fisher was only 60 when she passed. And this, of course, just seems to kind of be the traumatic icing on the cake of a really kind of terrible time in terms of these losses. We've lost David Bowie and Gene Wilder, George Michael, Alan Rickman. Some people we didn't even maybe realize we lost, like Kenny Baker, who played R2-D2 for a long time. And so I think there's been a lot of memes and a lot of mentioning of this on Twitter as a way to kind of try and heal and deal with what's really pretty traumatic. And it's easy to kind of blow it off because, well, they're just celebrities. But for many of us, they haven't been just celebrities. They're people we grew up with. And maybe we got to meet them, maybe we didn't. But they were important people, especially for many of us in our childhoods. People who grew up, say, with Alan Thicke or Florence Henderson. They were, surrogate mothers, and they were TV fathers for many people. And of course, Carrie Fisher, for many people, was that awesome older sister who helped pave the way towards the idea that anyone, princess, woman, whatever, could themselves be a badass and help save the galaxy. So, first and foremost, I don't want to make light of these losses. They're significant. There's tremendous talent that has been lost. And I think it's going to be too easy, actually, to forget it and move on. Because that's the nature of human experience. We lose people, we go to the funeral, and then often we go to lunch, right? Or we go home. And so pretty quickly, these talents will be left behind, and we'll get farther and farther away from it, and that's healthy. But it's also, I think, worth looking at for a few minutes, and beyond looking at it in terms of kind of a comic meme that shakes its fist at 2016, which we're looking forward to ending, there's also something to be said for how much advantage we didn't take of the time that we had with these people, and maybe in some ways more importantly with the people who we actually know. One wonders how many people are lamenting the fact that they'll never get to meet Carrie Fisher now. Maybe they had an opportunity to do so. Maybe she was at a convention or something like that, and they were like, no, not this year. And now they know they never can, right? I feel to some degree like that with David Bowie. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to go to a concert of David Bowie's, and I went. And it was a very strange evening because we heard the cover band. If I recall correctly, it was the Stereophonics, which were quite good. And then during the set change, a fellow fell from the rafters and died as they were making, like literally, I saw this shadow fall, and we heard this kind of wet thud, and we didn't know what was going on for a while. And then eventually they came on because we were just sitting there and everyone was confused. We're going to cancel the concert. Mr. Bowie thinks it would be inappropriate to continue the concert given the fact that The gentleman died making such change. And I have to say, I respect that choice a great deal. It would be kind of twisted to go on with the show when someone literally just died on the stage. Though I do remember a fellow next to me being very upset about it. My friend and I went with a friend, we were both kind of aghast at how this other gentleman responded in terms of, I don't care who died, it doesn't matter to me. I paid good money for this. If it makes anyone feel better, we got our money back. But I always kind of told myself that I'd go to another concert of Mr. Bowie's, and I never got to. And, well, there that is, right? So there is something to be said for thinking about this in terms of how much time do we have and the time we take for granted, and the time we take for granted with the people we love. The average life expectancy here in the States is somewhere around 78.8 years. So that means if we hit the average, we have maybe about 80 years in which to romp and play and have a good time and to love the people around us. And to be honest, that's not really much. And it's important to remember that's an average, right? There's a lot of people who don't make it that long. And there's some people who make it longer. But 80 years isn't that much. And to demonstrate, I've taken pennies. I like pennies a lot. I have a jar. This is not my only jar of pennies. It's a problem. I don't know. This is not 80 pennies. This is 80 pennies. And it's a little bit unfair because pennies are kind of thin, and so they get crammed in there, and you can be like, well, there's a lot of pennies there, but it's just 80 pennies. Albeit in a very cool Kylo Ren glass, but it doesn't make it much better. Let's say you are, in fact, 40. I'm just going to take my best guess, and I'm just going to dump out about half of them here. I want to play fair. Let's hope this isn't even half, let's say. But with the pennies that I've dumped out, you could, if you really wanted to make it depressing, think about it in terms of these are how many Christmases I have left. Right? I mean, these are the number of holidays in terms of holiday seasons that I still get to have in terms of time with my family. And it's not that much. So I think it's something to take seriously. If you look at our celebrities, you know, these icons who have passed this year, Carrie Fischer was only 60. So she was 20 years off that mark. Mr. Wilder, he did all right. He made it to 83. Prince missed it. He was 57. George Michael, 53. Mr. Bowie, 69. Miss Reynolds, 84. All right. Mr. Rickman made it to 69. Kenny Baker made it to 81. Now, what was strange is you realize how many of these celebrities didn't make it to that average. And you think, well, maybe there's a lifestyle issue, right? Drugs or drinking or whatnot, and maybe, but it's easy to judge a lot of them. We got to be honest, a lot of us aren't doing so well with that either. Maybe we're not hitting, you know, some of the hardcore drugs as hard, but we're hitting those Big Macs, right? So it's a little tough to realize that many of these people didn't come close. They were off by 15, 20 years. And I looked at the math. If you take Carrie Fisher, Gene Wilder, Prince, George Michael, David Bowie, Debbie Reynolds, and Alan Rickman, and you average them all together, you don't hit an average of 80. You're about 10-ish years off. And so it's like, well, what if I added someone who really made it? You know, Abe Vigoda. I love Abe Vigoda. You may not have realized he died, but he was on this great television show called Barney Miller. And he died, and I think he was in his 90s. If you add him to it, it still doesn't help. You still don't hit that 80 average mark. It's like, well, what if you add someone, you know, much older, the average is still pretty off for these celebrities. Even if you add in Ron Glass, who was also on Barney Miller and who died, and he was a little bit older too. He was also on Firefly. So I guess that's all to say, well, time's ticking. And as we come into celebrate this new year, which is pretty awesome, and we can only hope it'll be a better one, we also just lost a year. And we lost a lot of good people in that year. So I would take that time seriously. And part of what we should be asking when we enter the new year is, of course, how are we going to make our New Year's resolutions, right? And a lot of us are going to say we're going to lose weight or whatever. Something to be said for New Year's resolutions is a question that has come to my mind. And I can't tell you what New Year's resolutions you can make, so I'm just going to talk about mine. For me, this year has been incredibly difficult because I've seen the country become even more polarized, and I've seen the world do so. There's a lot of hate speak out there, and by that I don't mean only hatred towards minorities or hatred towards the LGBTQ population, but just hate speak in general, just anger, just a lot of getting on Twitter and saying really hateful things, or getting on Facebook and saying really hateful things, and being really nasty to family members while they do it. And made me really glad I don't have Facebook, because at least I didn't have to experience what I watched some of my friends deal with during the election, on both sides of the aisle. For me, there's been this strange realization that given the way some people are using Twitter, and some ways some people are just talking in general, even to our faces, in really kind of nasty and angry ways, is that there's this expectation that everyone's going to respond that way. And that's just the way people are. And I refuse. That's my New Year's resolution. That there's a lot of people who are a good deal more famous out there on YouTube and on television, who are being really, really angry and nasty. There's a lot of pundits who are saying a lot of thoughtless, cruel, incendiary things. And I have a feeling that it means that they will always be more popular than I ever will on YouTube or on television or on their podcasts. It just garners more views. But my New Year's resolution is not to do that. I want to be someone who demonstrates the fact that no matter how nasty people can get, and how nasty they can get about you, that we can still maintain our cool and be thoughtful and caring. Heaven forbid we be caring. And by that, what I mean is simply this. A lot of people died this year, which to me is a stark reminder of the fact that everybody dies. We all got to go sometime, and the clock's ticking. And I have to ask myself who I want to be before that death. There's no amount of anger, vitriol, hatred. There's no number of terrorists that I can kill. There's no amount of yelling that I can do. There's no amount of elections I can win, whether I became president or not, whether I become famous or not, no matter how many degrees I do or do not get, no matter what job I get, or how many people love me, I will still die. So the question is, who am I before that death? And for my part, I want to be able to look back on my years. If I do have the opportunity to look back before whatever bus has my name on it hits me, I want to be able to look back on those years and say, yes, I did try to be the best possible version of myself that I could be. And so I'd like to encourage everyone to do that. I can't tell anyone what the best version of themselves will be, and maybe that's an angry person, I don't know. But I know for me, that isn't that person. And that I'm not going to let other people and the anger and the partisanship and the divisiveness around the country drive me to that. That when I die, and it will happen, that I hopefully will have died being someone that I could respect. There's a lot of things about myself that I don't respect. But it's a new year, so it's an excellent time to try. So with that, I wish you a very happy new year, and I hope things go wonderfully. And if we're really, really lucky, maybe things will go a little bit better, at least in terms of beloved childhood icons. With that, I wish you a very happy new year. I hope it's wonderful for you. Have a lovely week.